Hello, I'm back, and I have no hair. Let's talk about that.
Holy moly!
So, if you don't know already, for the past 4 months, I was at Army Basic Combat Training because I enlisted in the Army as a musician. So today I kind of wanted to, first of all, bring myself back to the channel because I love doing these videos and I have missed it a lot. And second of all, I really wanted to talk about kind of the comparisons between drum corps and the Army Basic Combat Training, because it was kind of surprising to me that there was a lot of things that I just kind of recognized as something that we did in drum corps and that was super close. So let's get right into it. First off, let's talk about what I thought was like super similar between both drum corps and Army Basic Combat Training. There was an audition process that I had to do for both. Obviously in drum corps, you practice your music. You'll probably get maybe a month or two to practice on it, depending on when you bought it. And then you go to an audition camp. You do a musical audition, which maybe will be like 2 or 3 excerpts, and then you do maybe some playing exercises, and then you'll do a marching audition depending on where you're at. For the Army, I also had to audition before enlisting because I'm enlisting as a musician. So there was 6 pieces that I had to learn. They gave me a packet of 12. I chose 6 of those pieces, and then I worked on that for about a couple months. And then I had the band liaison actually came out to where I was living to my house, and I played those 6 pieces plus another 6 pieces of music that I had 24 hours to review that had gotten sent to me by email. So it was a pretty challenging audition. And then after about 2 or 3 weeks, I think, I found out that I had been offered a position to play in the Army band. So super awesome. But yeah, it was just, obviously your drum corps career starts with an audition, and my Army career started with an audition as well. The second thing, and I think probably the most obvious, is that you're gone for a long period of time. In drum corps, we were gone for about 3-ish months. The kind of sayings that it's 85 days. If you've ever seen Instagram or Facebook, there are always those 85 after 85. It's because generally from move-ins to finish, the drum corps season is about 85 days long. And that rung true for at least a couple of my seasons. I think 2022 was a little bit shorter if I remember, but my seasons at Pacific Crest were about that long. So from start to finish, from when I arrived at Fort Jackson to when I left, I was there for 81 days. So very, very similar amount of time from Fort Jackson being in basic combat training to a drum corps season. Now, the third thing I thought was pretty similar was living in a shared space with a lot of people. Now, it's not quite as an extreme as it is in drum corps, as it is in Fort Jackson, because in Fort Jackson, we're in a bay. It's a very, very large room with a whole bunch of bunk beds. And I think at the start, our bay had 55 guys in it. Obviously in drum corps, there's way more people, but in a larger space. So the first few years it was 154 people. And then at Blue Devils, it was like 165 to 170 because we did have alternates. So a whole ton of people in a gym. And depending on how big the gym is, you can be in some pretty tight quarters. You will have very little to absolutely no privacy in both drum corps and basic combat training. And this is a big thing that I think a lot of people in both places had to kind of learn how to deal with. For me, at least in basic combat training, because I had done drum corps before, I didn't really have a big issue. Not that I didn't value my privacy, because I do, but it wasn't a huge concern for me because I was already used to living in a space for a very long period of time with a lot of people and having not much privacy. But I do think that you get a lot more privacy in basic combat training than you do in drum corps. Our showers had stalls and curtains. In drum corps, you don't get that. Like in drum corps, you don't even get to have a moment of peace when you shower. It's just, for the most part, big rooms with all the showers in there, and not having a private shower can be annoying at first, although you do get used to it. But in basic combat training, it was something that I very, very much appreciated because I really went straight from basic combat training after a drum corps season. I was on staff at Gold, so I only had about a month between. So going on tour and then going straight to basic combat training, you kind of remember some things from tour, and I was like, at least I have a hot shower. They were hot showers, and it's a private shower. I very much appreciated that. In basic combat training, even though it's a lot of people in it's a pretty small room, you at least get to have like a space that you can call your home, I guess, if you could even call it that. But you have your own private space. You have a locker, and then you have your bunk drawers. So that's nice to be able to have that kind of stuff. And then you have your bed. You get to go to the same bed or the same bunk every night for the most part, with the exception of like a few of the FTXs, every single night, and that's your space. Nobody else can go into that space. And so I think that's something that I very much appreciated, whereas in drum corps, even on the times that you might have your own privacy, like for example in drum corps, the only thing you're really going to decorate on your own is your bus seat. In your bus seat, you're basically still sharing a space with somebody else. So I feel like we got a little bit more privacy in basic combat training than we did on tour. But that's not to say that there's very much privacy to get. It's the little things that you very much appreciate, and that I very much appreciated while I was in Fort Jackson. Next thing that I'm going to talk about is long days of training / drilling. And I'm going to kind of break down the schedule a little bit so I can describe how it compares and how it's very, very similar, to be honest. Let's talk about like basically moved into drum corps spring training, because I feel like that's what's most comparable to basic combat training. When you're in spring training, your schedule is going to look something like this. You're going to wake up at like 8 o'clock, right? You're going to eat breakfast for about an hour, and then you're going to start rehearsal at 9. You'll have a 4-hour block, and then you'll have your lunch break, and that would be from, let's see, 10, 11, 12, 1. So from 1 to 2, you're going to get your lunch break, and then you're going to have another 4-hour block, and then from 6 to 7 you'll have your dinner break. After your dinner break, you're going to do another set of rehearsal, and that would usually go from like 7 to 10, and then after that last set of rehearsal, you're going to get your snack, and then you'll have your time to shower, and then lights out is going to be at about 11 or midnight, depending on how things go. In basic combat training, it was a pretty similar schedule with the exception of the meal breaks that I will say. Now in Fort Jackson, we woke up at 4:30 pretty much every single morning. So you get from 4:30 to 5:30, you're going to wake up, you're going to conduct hygiene. That's going to be brushing your teeth, shaving your face. I like to take a shower in the morning. You just woke me up a little bit better. And then make your bed. You have to make your bed every single morning. And then you'll either toe the line or you'll go downstairs for first formation, and that was usually at about 5:45 for us. After that, we would usually start PT, and that's usually what you start with in your morning blocks in drum corps too. And then we would go eat lunch at around breakfast at around 7 or 7:30. After that, after breakfast, in the chow hall, we usually would start our training for the day. That could vary depending on the day. Every single day was pretty much a different thing. You're gonna go do your training, and then you're probably gonna be eating an MRE for lunch, which is not the greatest after about 3 months. And then you'll continue training, and then you'll make it back in time to go to the chow hall for dinner generally. And then after dinner, you go back to the company, and then we do whatever we need to do for the rest of the night, whether that be mail call or eat really, really bad calcium bars, and then they send you up to bed, and you're out around 7:45. So that's kind of what a schedule would look like in Army basic combat training, but generally it's still the same. Like, you're getting your 3 meals, you're getting your 8 hours of sleep, and then you're just doing training for the entire day when you're not eating. This is a pretty quick one, but there's a need for being at a decent level of physical fitness for both drum corps and Army basic combat training. Now, the PT for basic combat training could vary from day to day, and I want to talk about this a little bit. In drum corps, especially at Blue Devils, when I marched Blue Devils, my legs hurt very, very, very bad. Now, that could have had to do with the fact that we were marching straight leg as compared to bent leg at Pacific Crest, but I think it was just generally because we were moving a whole lot more, and because you're only really using your legs for every single day for 3 months straight, my legs hurt a lot. Whereas in basic combat training, when we do PT, we would do varied stuff. Like, we would do maybe some weight training one day, and then we would do some more like high intensity PT, at some more like body weight exercises another day, and then maybe that third day you would do running. So you're giving your different parts of your body opportunities to recover so that you can actually build that muscle. Whereas in drum corps, it's just legs, then the next day you're gonna work your legs, and then the next day you're gonna work your legs. And so I think in basic combat training, it was a little bit more healthy, I would say, for us to, be training these different things. In both cases, I think if you're not at a decent level of physical fitness, you're gonna get injured one way or another, whether it's on tour or in basic combat training. I think the same rings true for both cases. And then lastly, and this may be something that's not as relatable to the modern era of drum corps, but we did a lot of push-ups. Like when I marched, we would do a ton of push-ups. Our staff would make us do push-ups. We would do push-ups on our own if we made mistakes. That's not really the case nowadays, but in the Army, I think we did probably triple the amount of push-ups. We would do at least like 120 a day. But yeah, we did a lot of push-ups. Now I want to talk about the things that I thought were different between basic combat training and drum corps tour / spring training. Obviously, one is it's the military, so there's a lot of things that are different. Like, we're not preparing for a show, but there are some things that I thought were different from a more like day-to-day, like living there standpoint. And I think the first thing is that you get yelled at way more. Maybe this is different from back in the day, those guys that were marching Vanguard and cadets and Phantom and that kind of thing. But obviously nowadays, like as staff and, speaking from experience, our goal is not to yell at you and kind of put you down or give you, I guess, strong encouragement to get things right. We're not going to make you do push-ups nowadays. But it's not about that. They're not your friends. They're not there to encourage you. Even though the Army likes to say, like, oh, we're mentors, and I did feel that. But they're there to teach you how to do things the right way, and there's no other option to do it wrong or else you get punished. So you're going to get yelled at, but the drill sergeants aren't just going to yell at you like, hey, do this thing right. They're going to sit there for 5 to 10 minutes just roasting the hell out of you so that yeah, I probably should have done that thing the right way. And that is what I found was pretty different from drum corps, because in drum corps, even if a staff member's roasting you, it's like a minute at most, and it's not in your face roasting like it is at basic combat training. This may come as a surprise, but I found that we got a lot more sleep in basic combat training than we did on tour. On tour, about half of the time that you're on the bus, they're going to consider that you're getting sleep time, and then they're going to supplement that with whatever is necessary. So if you're on the bus for an 8-hour trip, they're going to say, okay, you were sleeping for 4 hours of that, and then we got to give you 4 hours of floor time. But in basic combat training, other than the field exercises when we're out sleeping in sleeping bags in the dirt, we're getting a full 8 hours every single night if you're going to bed at lights out. And I think that was really, really nice because, like I said, I had just gotten off of tour with Gold about a month prior. Even as a staff members, we didn't really get that much sleep, especially because we were doing meetings a whole lot of the time after lights out. So while the rest of the corps was sleeping, we're still awake doing meetings. And so in basic combat training, I just felt like we got more sleep. The second to the last thing that I have is that everybody's got a different reason for being there. And I think that this is one of the bigger things that you might notice, even if it's just subconsciously that you notice when you're in basic combat training. In basic combat training, everybody's there for a different reason. Now, everybody might be starting some career. Some people are only there to go to school. It's really different from person to person. For me, I wanted to start a career so that I could take care of my significant other, and also so that I could have a career in music, and those are kind of hard to come by, to be honest. But for other guys, they might have just graduated out of high school. Oh, I've always wanted to joining the army, or I really just needed a job. And for a lot of those people, it can differ as to the level of commitment that they have and the level of effort that they put into being there and doing the right things. Whereas in drum corps, everybody's on the same page. Everybody's pretty much there for the same exact reasons, would be it experience, education, or just wanting to perform. But all in all, it causes there to be a lot more buy-in from member to member in drum corps, whereas the trainees can differ a lot into how much effort they're actually putting into being there and doing the right things. Lastly, and this is probably what I would say is the biggest difference and the most obvious when you really think about it, is that you're paid to be there at basic combat training, and you are not paid, you're paying to be there in drum corps. And it's probably I think it was a big motivator for me, the fact that I was getting paid. Like every time that we were sitting there doing something like cleaning weapons for 12 hours out of the day, I would think, oh man, this sucks. And when I started feeling sorry for myself, I would just think like, wait, I'm getting paid to be here. Why am I complaining? I'm getting paid for this. And so that was a really big motivator for me, and that's kind of what kept me going a lot of the time. I think generally drum corps prepared me very, very, very well for basic combat training, whether I knew it at the time or not. But if anybody is kind of wondering how the two compare, or if anybody's thinking of going down a similar path that I'm going on, hopefully this video helped. I think that if you're doing drum corps and you're considering doing the military, drum corps is preparing you very, very well, at least for the Army. I know the Marines do a lot more than we do, but as far as training goes. But it prepared me very well. I was already used to a lot of the things that we were doing, like time management is a big skill you learn in drum corps, and I found that was something that a lot of guys struggled with when we're in basic combat training. Like, how are you have a full hour and you can't brush your teeth, shave your face, and make your bed? Some people struggled with that somehow, and to me it was like the wildest thing in the world. And I remembered, like, yeah, in drum corps, like those EPLs really teach you how to get things done. But other than that, I'm really excited about the new career that I'm starting, and I'm happy that I am back to making videos. I will see y'all next time.